Good evening from Geneva. It is my pleasure to join this session today to speak about one of the most important issues of our generation. Before moving to this beautiful city of Geneva last year, I lived most part of my life in Nigeria, a country of 200 million people generating a maximum of 7,000 megawatts of usable electricity. We experienced more darkness than light, when the latter could have made life even more meaningful for us. Colleagues, lack of electricity drastically reduced my productivity while living in my home country and forced me to sleep most nights in the school or the radio studio where I hosted a local show so that I can have some level of electricity to work and also power the internet. Someone competing with the rest of the world from this basis is already on a back foot before the race even started. This is the story of millions of young people from developing countries. The latest International Energy Agency Net Zero report found that to reach net zero emissions by 2050, annual clean energy investment worldwide will need to triple to around $4 trillion by 2030. With 785 million people lacking access to electricity and 2.6 billion people without clean cooking solutions, the report revealed that it will cost $40 billion a year, equivalent of 1% of average annual investment in the energy sector currently, to meet both needs. Scaling up the use and deployment of clean energy requires that government policies are with as minimal barriers as possible to enable low-income groups and young people to participate. A public policy on clean energy is only equitable when all vulnerable groups in the country or communities are involved and benefiting from the solution. Also, it is important that government policies democratize clean energy solutions. Creating energy communities has been successful in many countries, ensuring energy democracy that is managed and owned by customers to increase their participation and energy security. This model undoubtedly favors youth-led clean energy enterprises. Germany, the UK, Chile, and also the Netherlands provide some examples on this. In fact, in Germany, 22% of installed renewable energy capacity is reportedly owned by sustainable energy communities. Bangladesh remains an example of how good policy design can really transform lives even in the most rural places, with a public-private partnership that drove solar home systems adoption across the country for nearly 2 decades now. With incentives such as tax breaks on net metering and subsidies, the government was able to drive this transformation, resulting in the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 9.6 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent between 2003 and 2018. In the same vein, energy equity can be achieved by enabling access to clean cooking facilities, which will improve the life of women and children, especially in underdeveloped and developing countries where they are usually responsible for cooking meals. In some countries, women are underrepresented in the sustainable energy sector, even though lack of energy access affects women more than men. Providing women with equal access to training opportunities and incentives to join the sector will help address this gap. It is extremely important that young people are part of decision-making at the highest level of the energy space. For many years, young people working in the energy sector lacked a space for engagement in the various intergovernmental spaces that exist on clean energy. However, with many years of work and engagement with stakeholder countries, especially between 2018 and 2020, the SDG 7 Youth Constituency was established to bridge this gap. It has gone on to make tremendous achievements in galvanizing youth actions and mobilizing young people behind the specific advocacies relevant to them, while striving to support youth-led initiatives, not least with the creation of the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub, the first ever global repository of sustainable energy businesses, initiatives, and enterprises led by young people. The constituency has also created numerous opportunities for young people to be meaningfully engaged in actions and the decision-making processes on clean energy and lead innovation in this sector. Just to highlight 2 of the over 100 projects documented on the Sustainable Energy Hub. The first one, Liter of Light Bangladesh, a research-based social enterprise providing free of cost eco-friendly lighting solutions to poor communities such as coastal areas, hill tract areas, islands, slums, and refugee camps in Bangladesh. It develops and distributes easy-to-make lighting solutions out of locally available materials and helping poor communities to learn their technology and start their own micro-enterprise under a solopreneur project. Another enterprise is Energy Shift, enabling citizens to participate in energy transition by enabling them to invest and co-own a part of solar energy power plant, thus doing good for the environment and making money at the same time. But there is still more to do, and we are nowhere near the global goal for clean, reliable, and affordable energy for all. That is why this session today is even more important, to explore the multi-sectoral benefits of empowering communities with access to clean and reliable energy without altering nature. I thank Rockefeller Foundation for this exciting and productive series that they've embarked on, and I look forward, like all of us who have joined today, to listening to the brilliant lineup of panelists and interesting perspectives they have to share. We must remember that until the last home in the last community without clean energy is electrified, we have not achieved our goals. I thank you for your kind attention.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome to this episode of RF Breakthrough Green Energy Innovators, Inspiration from the Climate Generation. My name is Tatiana Schlossberg, and I'm a climate change and environmental journalist and author of Inconspicuous Consumption, The Environmental Impact You Don't Know You Have, and I'll be moderating today's panel discussion. As the generation that will live with the consequences of climate inaction, young people have been at the forefront of challenging the status quo as innovators, trailblazers, and advocates. Around the world, they are leading the climate change discourse and are helping rethink traditional energy systems, hopefully changing energy for good. This episode of RF Breakthrough shines a spotlight on the young people working on the front line of Sustainable Development Goals 13, Climate Action, and 7, Affordable and Clean Energy. Our group of panelists today are some of the most powerful voices championing green energy, and they have seen firsthand the benefits of renewable energy in their respective sectors and communities. We are here today to utilize their knowledge, passion, and commitment to better understand the benefits of renewables and how they are having an impact on the ground, all without contributing to the climate disaster. So let's welcome our impressive panelists, Eduarda, Ellie, Shaylee, and William. So why don't we start by having each of you tell the audience a little bit about yourselves. We'll start with Eduarda.
Hi everyone, I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Eduarda Zogby. I'm from Brazil, but I'm currently based in New York City, where I'm doing my master in public administration, focusing on energy and environment at Columbia University. And in my professional background, I've worked with climate change projects at the Inter-American Development Bank in Brazil, and also at Sustainable Energy for All with energy access and gender.
Thank you. And Ellie?
Hello, everybody. My name is Ellie Kevin Arico. I am a young Kenyan engineer and a co-founder at Renewable Energy. Currently, I'm working at the Spenomatic Group as an electrical engineer. I have deep interest in energy economics, energy management, and energy policy. It's a pleasure to be here and to share the audience with my worthy panelists.
Thank you so much. Shelley?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited. I'm Shelley Jha, and I'm based out of India. I have worked as a policy researcher in the energy access space, primarily looking at access to clean cooking energy and livelihoods with a focus on gender and social inclusion. My work has centered around understanding the interlinked linkages between poverty, inequality, and access to energy.
Thank you so much. And finally, William?
Hi everyone, my name is William Gambwamba. I'm from Malawi. I'm co-founder of the Moving Windmills project. Right now we're working on designing and building the innovation center that is going to allow young people to design a specific project that will address the problem that they are facing in their own community. So I started my work on the renewable energies when I was younger, trying to fix the problem that we are facing. At that time, I thought that we just had like the problem where it was like a drought, but I didn't know that that's the results of the climate change. and I had like to do something, and I built the windmill to address that problem. At that time, I didn't know that that was like due to the climate change, and the response is to come up with like a renewable source of energy, which was building the windmill. So I'm excited for this panel today. Thank you.
That's great. So why don't we just start off with a discussion right now, and we're also inviting the audience to participate using hashtag RF Breakthrough and hashtag YouthLeadSDG7. Shaylee, you've worked extensively on access to clean cooking energy and livelihoods, as you mentioned, with a focus on gender and social inclusion in India. Can you tell us a little bit about how renewable energy can support communities, especially women, to rise up from poverty, and why clean cooking in particular is so important to that effort?
Thank you, Tatiana. So I think renewable energy has a very critical role to play in empowering women by improving access to energy, not just within the household, but also when it comes to community spaces and more importantly for productive uses. If we think about it, women traditionally have had limited access to energy, be it for cooking energy or electricity access within the household. Their needs and preferences are often not prioritized, and even for livelihood generation. This often constrains them to operate at very low levels of productivity and higher levels of drudgery. And access to energy can be a very critical enabler for economic growth and poverty reduction in developing countries, which can drive socio-economic development and increase productivity, enable mechanization, and reduce drudgery. And clean energy particularly has a very important role to play in that. What we have seen from our work is that women have been involved in the clean energy sector broadly in three ways. One is as end users of energy products. Now, this can be clean cooking energy or for clean energy powered livelihood appliances. Women traditionally are more time poor, and we all know that, and thereby they benefit a lot more from mechanization. This is also true not just for women, but for marginalized communities by caste, class, religion, ethnicity within the country as well. And we found that decentralized renewable energy has a very critical role to play in improving this, in reducing time poverty and improving mechanization. Decentralized renewable energy solutions, be it for something like a solar-powered cold storage or a sewing machine or any form of appliance which is, providing that uninterrupted and reliable source of energy and source of income to women, especially micro entrepreneurs, do end up leading to higher productivity in both farm and non-farm sectors for women, and thereby, like often when we talk about access to energy, for women it's limited to clean cooking, but it goes beyond that. So definitely one is women as end users of energy products, but also women as employees in the energy sector. We've seen that renewable energy globally has a lot more women involved in the sector as employees than the conventional energy. So RE definitely provides that opportunity to undo what was not going well with the conventional energy sector. Also, the higher skilled jobs that are required in the energy sector, in the clean energy sector, do provide us the opportunity to involve more women. In addition, we've also seen a huge rise of women as last mile distributors of energy products, which has not only led to increase in their own income, but and improving their access to energy, to clean energy, but also helping them reach more and more women to be able to adopt renewable energy. And the third is women as founders of energy companies. And here we've also seen that often when women are founders of energy companies and they're running in energy companies, especially clean energy businesses, they've had the these businesses have had a lot more potential to mainstream a very equitable and especially gender equitable lens in their business models, not just for the benefit of the business itself, but also to create more opportunities for women across the energy value chain. And often women-led energy companies have ended up doing a lot better in that. So improving women's productivity and income through reliable and affordable renewable energy for economic and non-economic activities, which eventually lead to reducing time poverty and drudgery, does have the potential to help us achieve as a society not just the SDG 7, but also SDG 5 and 8 simultaneously.
Oh, it's amazing how all these things sort of, work together and you make one change and it really benefits people in so many different ways. Speaking of that, Ellie, you, as you mentioned, you co-founded Right Now Energy, which works to power critical services in communities like health centers, schools, and small businesses, particularly in regions with unreliable grid electricity. Can you talk a little about how renewable energy can affect health outcomes in the developing world?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm saying, according to statistics, close to 650 million people in sub-Saharan Africa live and do not have access to clean energy, not just energy alone, but even electricity. The fact that I come from this side of the planet, it speaks volumes about my experience from this side of the world. Talking about access to electricity and with respect to the health sector, electricity is an enabler of things like telemedicine, powering critical equipment in hospitals, and actually lighting. Most of the medical procedures depend on the availability of electricity so that it can aid doctors and the health personnel working in health centers to be able to attend to their duties. So it also enables, if we talk about telemedicine, doctors are able to attend to the patients remotely through telemedicine. And if you look at the background of that, it all depends or lies on energy.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know that, there's, at least in this country, concern about, how hospitals, if they run on diesel generators, contributes to the pollution that causes some of the, chronic illnesses that bring people to the hospital, like asthma and other things. So it's, again, we're seeing so much kind of overlap between what's good for people and what's good for the planet. William, when you were 14, you built a wind turbine to bring electricity and running water to your community. Can you tell us how you did that and how technology and innovation can be used to make renewable energy better and more accessible?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small village in Malawi. I grew up in a farming community. Pretty much most of the people are farmers, and we didn't have electricity at home. And also it's a farming community. We depend on like growing food, and farming can be easy and it can also be challenging. There's a number of things that makes the farming very difficult. It's all like rain-fed agriculture, so you have to grow during the rainy season. That year when I built the windmill, we had a drought. As the result of that, I was supposed to go to secondary school. I couldn't go to high school because my parents didn't have money. But I started going to the library and I found a book that had the pictures of the windmill. I decided to build the windmill, but one thing that when I was building the windmill, I didn't realize that the challenges that we are facing, some of the problems was due to the climate change that we are experiencing, that people have either like the pollution to the climate, and as the response, I had to come up with ideas. So I found like the windmill, if I can build the windmill to pump water, I'll do irrigation, but at the same time, I can also have the lights. Instead of using the kerosene lamp, we can have the lights from the windmill, which is like renewable. So I decided like to work on like building the windmill. That's how I started. First, I was addressing the challenges, the problem that we are facing. But at the end of the day, afterwards, I realized that it's not just about addressing the challenge, but also like trying to look where do we need to go as the society in terms of changing the way the climate change by bringing up renewable energies with some of it, it's like the wind, it can be like the solar. So the wind power is the one that I found at that time it was easier for me to be able to work on it and building the windmill and to be able to provide electricity, which a lot of people don't have it in my community.
Wow, it's such a cool story, especially when I think about what I was doing when I was 14. Eduarda, on electricity access policies and gender and energy products to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 7, which is focused on affordable and clean energy. How does gender play into the clean energy transition, and what kind of opportunities exist for women in these emerging markets?
Well, first, thank you for your question, Tatiana. And I believe that opportunities begin first with access to education. So unfortunately, we know that young women and women all around the world don't necessarily have access to this basic right. And, even those who have access to education, they don't have the right incentives to get into the energy industry. So, for example, there's a study from AAUW that shows that only 28% of women are studying STEM subjects. And I think that's a problem not only because we need more women in STEM, but speaking for myself as a political scientist, we also need women who are not in STEM. We need more women engaged in the sector that are lawyers, that are accountants, that are economists. And in terms of accelerating the energy transition, I think that emerging markets still have a massive infrastructure gap. And I think that when we talk about sustainable infrastructure, there are opportunities all across the energy supply chain. And we need youth dedicating their careers to try to foster sustainable infrastructure in their countries. There's a study from the New Climate Economy that shows that in the next 15 years, there is an investment opportunity of $90 trillion for infrastructure, and 2/3 of that infrastructure are in the global south. So for most of us here, not only women, but youth in general, this is a massive opportunity. Now, finally, I believe that women have a central role in this shift towards the sustainable economy. Unfortunately, I think that in general, and as Irina has showed us, we only have 32% of women present in the renewable energy industry and only 22% in oil and gas. But things are not as bad as they used to be, because the Women's Energy Council has showed that there are around 40% of women already in board positions in North America and Europe, but we don't see the same numbers for the rest of the continent, whereas for South America, for example, we only have 4% of women present in boards across the energy sector. So I think that we have to break the glass ceiling and try to promote more women in leadership positions so that we can accelerate towards a more sustainable economy.
Thank you. And building on that, Shelly, you've been a leader in bringing gender, as you talked about in your answer to your previous question, into the discussion of clean energy in India's rural communities through the Powering Livelihoods initiative. I think you did speak a little bit about this, but can you talk or explain about how renewable energy is important to achieving an inclusive and sustainable future for India, particularly for rural communities?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think just like any other development outcomes, deeply rooted social structures play a very critical role in determining even access to energy. So if we look at the current levels of access to energy within the country, they vary very much by where a household is based, whether they are, in rural areas versus urban areas, within urban areas, whether they are in non-slum areas versus slum areas, or to which communities do they belong to, and often aspects like affordability and availability play a very important role in accessing energy. But we've also seen that renewable energy has the potential to expand this access to energy for remote areas and also correct for these inequities, especially when it comes to decentralized renewable energy technologies. And through our work in specifically looking at DRE for livelihoods, we've seen that even in a country like India, we around 4.3 million micro businesses, which are operated both by men and women, they have reported lack of reliable electricity as the biggest bottleneck. And decentralized renewable energy in can play a very important role in improving the incomes and improving this reliability for these businesses. And when it comes to be it the gendered impacts because of the higher time poverty that women end up spending due to the unpaid care work, doing the unpaid care work, they do end up benefiting a lot more. But for this inclusive and sustainable future, I think it is necessary for us to translate the principles of equity and equality into practical steps for not just the energy entrepreneurs, but the investors and policymakers in the sector. And a few recommendations around that have been collecting and analyzing data in the energy space, not just disaggregated by gender, but also disaggregated by communities to understand communities' needs and preferences of energy. Because I don't think at this point we have a very clear idea as well because of the lack of data. Also building capacity of policymakers, implementation specialists in the government ecosystem and in the non-government ecosystem to be more gender sensitive and inclusive in their approach and how to do that in the implementation processes. Along with that, also undertaking massive gender responsive budgeted in the energy space, which often seems to be missing. And I would also like to build a bit on Edwarda's point of how often energy sector has a lot more dominance of people from STEM disciplines, but for doing all this and making it a lot more inclusive, it will be essential for the sector to have more diverse people across the board to be able to implement this in a more inclusive and equitable way.
Yes, and speaking of bringing people to working together on these challenges, William, I know you're currently working on bringing the Moving Windmills Innovation Center to life in Kasungu. And it will be a space where young people will get some of the resources that they need to help create solutions to agricultural challenges in particular. Maybe you could explain a little about why renewable energy and sustainability in general is important for farmers, particularly in the developing world more generally, and what that future might look like.
Thank you. We are working on, we want to build the innovation center that is going to allow young people have an idea to come and work with us to design a specific project that who address the problem that they are facing in their own communities. One thing that, as the Moving Windmills project, one thing that we believe that talent is universal, but opportunities, they are not. So we look at some of the challenges. There are a lot of already ideas of how they're going to be able to implement some solution, but sometimes lack of facilities that will help you guide you to make sure that you'll be able to achieve that. Just like example, having a green electricity that you're going to be able to use to design, to learn equipment that you're using for that, it's lacking. So with the Moving Windmills project, we want to be able to have a space where young people can be able to learn and understand about renewable energies. They're going to be able to understand different forms of energy that they're going to be able to work, or either designing a system for their own communities, or either if they are designing a system in agriculture, they're going to be able to do that at the same time. But that's what we want to do with the Innovation Center.
Great, and I don't know if you could, if you wanted to explain a little bit about how farmers might use renewable energy, why that might be important for your
it's
community.
very important, like the farmers that they can be able to use renewable. We are one work that we are doing. We are also working a lot into using solar irrigation systems, solar water pumps to pump water to improve their life, because most of the farmers in Malawi, they are depending on land-fed agriculture. But with the climate change, each and every year, you are not quite sure when the rain is gonna come, and when the rain comes, you are not quite sure if it's gonna continue until the crops mature. So some years we have good land, some years bad land. So in order to address those challenges, we are working on designing some solar water pump, designing using the electricity that they can be able to generate to be able to do that, and also at the same time to use the same power of energy that they can run machine to be able to process the crops, the food that they are growing. So we are hoping that by having that reliable energy, renewable energy, it's gonna not only production, but also it's gonna help on once they produce the crops, they're gonna be able to be able to store it in a good storing environment and able to sell it without having a problem. So that's what we are looking at doing with the Moving Windmills Innovation Center, mostly focusing on rural smallholder farmers, how we can be able to improve their production using the energy.
And Ellie, you helped design a solar electrification plant for a nonprofit health clinic in Kiambu, Kenya, which will benefit more than 20,000 people by giving them better access to medical care. I'm sure we'd all love to hear more about this project and how it might transform both care and access for the people it will serve. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Close at as a renewable energy. And some fun fact about this area of the world is that most of our populations exist in the rural areas. You find that electricity access is majorly in the urban areas, and some of these are the areas that exist in the rural setups where most of our populations are. They're either underserved or totally not connected to the grid. If you look at microgrids, it provides an alternative, non-wire alternatives, that is, to be able to achieve the energy access for all. Microgrid renewable energy has allowed us to develop such projects that energy is able to be used where it is produced. So we are able to evade costs such as getting to design transmission lines and actually getting off the grid, that our old grid systems that are actually capital intensive to build. For this hospital, while we were designing these solutions, or after we had completed the project, some of the stories that the residents or the locals got to share with us touched us so much, because, for example, at Juja Farm Health Center, one of their major areas of concern is the areas that they are concerned about is delivery of delivering kids by women, or let me say childbirth. They have the maternity wing that one of the nurses was telling us that so there are days that they used to help women deliver in the dark, or if they don't deliver in the dark, then they used candles to help these women deliver. After having completed the project, they were so much impressed with the solutions that we gave them, and they are very proud. And moving forward, we are hoping that the newly born kids will not be able to, they will not suffer conditions like developing respiratory problems because of the old energy resources that they were using to light up the facility. Another thing that we're looking at is generally the betterment of access to, like right now, the Kenyan government is trying so hard to administer the COVID-19 vaccines. The hospital right now, they're able to power their fridges, and they're able to keep these vaccines at temperatures that will make sure that they have a longer shelf life, and they're able to deliver it to the people and make it into full use. Another thing is the hospital right now they've been able to extend the operation hours, in that maybe operations that could have maybe been shifted to daytime, or they could only be made accessible during the daytime. Right now they're able to access them for 24 hours because of the lighting that we've been able to provide for them. They also have right now they have implemented a digital system through which they're able to register their deaths and even record all the hospital operations, from logging in people, like admitting people into the hospital, their treatment, all through until they're discharged. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's well, all of your stories, but that one reminds you that we talk about the energy transition on these massive global scales, but that it actually really does improve people's day-to-day lives. So just thinking about somebody's experience of childbirth being safer and healthier is so powerful, as you said, and important. Eduarda, based on your experience working as an energy and gender consultant at Sustainable Energy for All, and as a climate change consultant at the Inter-American Development Bank in Brazil, can you talk about some of the specific ways that the energy sector can improve gender equality? I know you talked about some of the numbers and the disparities before, but how do we make it happen?
Sure, no, that's a great question. I think that the first step for the energy sector is to improve its communication and engagement with schools and universities. And the reason for this is because a lot of energy careers start with interests in the university, in college, and even in high school. So the energy sector has to start translating these opportunities to through formal channels in schools, through career counselors and advisors, recruitment sessions, and career fairs. And it's also very important to highlight that on job postings, we really need job postings to be more gender oriented. And when I say gender oriented, I just mean that sometimes, and especially in Portuguese and in some languages where you're calling out for an engineer, in Portuguese, for example, you can call the engineer the female word or the male word. And you'll see that most of these job postings are targeting male engineers. So, and also throughout your career, I think that job postings also have to consider maternity leaves and flexible hours. And this point is very important because what a lot of publications say is that the hardest part is not necessarily attracting women to the energy sector, but retaining these women there. And the reason why is because it's already such a male-dominated industry that there are barely any other women for you to look up to that are in leadership positions. And sometimes they feel that they cannot share their opinions, or their achievements are not highlighted. And Shaylee might even know a little bit about this because, I mean, all women working in the energy sector throughout the world have experienced these situations. So I think that also finally another solution that is very practical for the energy sector is establishing quotas in all level positions, entry level, and especially for board level positions. A lot of companies have been doing that in the private sector and it has been successful. And then I think the last point would be promoting equal pay. I think it's the most basic and important step in achieving gender equality in the energy sector. Obviously, this is a problem in all countries and sectors, but knowing how innovative the energy sector is, we should lead by example.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was such a fantastic discussion. I learned so much from each of you and the various sectors in which you work. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and experiences. Before we close, I wanted to ask each of you just the same question. Given all the work that you've done and how inspiring your stories are, what is your advice or your call to action for young people watching who want to do something on the climate crisis, or work to end energy poverty? Why don't we start with Shaylee?
Thank you, Tatiana. It was indeed a very good discussion. I think what I would like to say is that, we are a generation that is experiencing firsthand the energy transition. And I think it's our responsibility to ensure that this transition is just and inclusive, and it does not leave the marginalized behind, and that we do not commit the same mistakes that we committed as a society in the previous energy transitions. And I think, the first step for that would be to identify and acknowledge the differential needs that different communities and um, uh, uh, have across the developing and developed world, and incorporating them in the solutions for climate crisis. And I think as young people, it does become our responsibility to ensure that.
Thank you. William?
Yeah, it's the future is very exciting. It's this has been like exciting, and the for most like for young people, for me, I just like believe that the challenge that we have right now in the energy sector, it will need solution, and those solution will just create like some opportunities for either young people are working on it in the communities that people have already have left behind for some years now. I think it's a time we're gonna move just directly into renewables instead of moving the other way around. It's already like exciting that we're just gonna be moving towards the renewable in any energy sector that people be able to achieve. And I know that it's not gonna be easier, most like for people to come up with those ideas, but the ideas they are there, and the people always they should always know that always whenever there's like a challenge, there's always like a solution, and that solution can bring up like some opportunities for their own like communities. I think sometimes you just have to start like small until you're going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. So very excited for the future in terms of renewable energies and the renewable energies that people come up to improve livelihood of so many people in so many communities around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellie?
Yeah, thank you. As a clean energy advocate, I believe that there's an urgent need to not only decarbonize our grids, we also need to decentralize, we also need to delocalize access to energy and also democratize access to energy. Access to energy is a fundamental right, and everybody needs access to clean energy and electricity in order to better their lives. I'm calling upon the young people to start with whatever they have, even if it's just by word alone or by the ability of us being able to speak. Just start with whatever you have, and let us call for collaborations in order for us to create a world that we want to live in and want to leave behind for the future generations. We have to start now.
That's great. And finally, Eduarda?
Well, I think that my call to action for youth, for everyone that is listening to us, is that we need more youth in governments. And I say this because I'm not thinking necessarily about, running for politics, being in your country's parliament, Congress. I'm saying that we have to become policymakers, especially because the energy industry is extremely innovative. But I think that young people have been seeing this innovation happening in the private sector, but if we don't have a robust policy and regulatory framework, it's going to be really hard to spread this innovation, especially spread this innovation equally and ensure a just energy transition. So I think that it is extremely crucial that we have more young people engaged with their governments, with local, subnational governments, because I think this is the only way forward to end the climate crisis and to end energy poverty.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, as William said, it's, we're dealt an enormous series of challenges, but, it's an opportunity to do things differently, whether in government or the private sector, and, in people's daily lives, as well as sort of big scales of governments and corporations. And so I'm very excited for the future that you all are doing that important work. So thank you for those inspiring words and for everything that you've said today. We hope that these invaluable insights and ideas from these young people around the world, here and at the Youth for Climate Summit in general, are reflected at COP26 in Glasgow in November. This will be an important opportunity to build ambition across sectors on implementation of renewable energy and the related goals under the 2030 Agenda. Thank you all for joining, and for those watching, you can continue the conversation using hashtag RFBreakthrough and hashtag YouthLeadSDG7. Thank you so much, and thank you all again for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.